What's going on, everybody? Thanks for watching again. Welcome to another video. Today we're driving a 1987 Porsche 944 Turbo. The 951 is what Porsche referred to it as to set it apart from the naturally aspirated 944. In 82 they introduced the 944 in Europe, and then in 83 they introduced the 944 to the US market. Had about 160 horsepower, something like that, so it was a huge improvement over the 924. I mean, it had basically another 60 horsepower. So it was a very, very widely loved car. The 944 got really good reviews from all the magazines. It was just considered one of the best handling cars that you could get. Then in 1986 they took the 2.5 liter that was in the 944 and they turbocharged it, and the end result was 220 horsepower and about 243 foot-pounds of torque. So definitely an impressive performance car. It was kind of, at the time, I mean, you look at those numbers now and they don't seem that impressive, but if you put it in the context of the mid-80s, that was a very impressive number, and the car was 0 to 60 in around 6 seconds. It was very similar to the basic, not the NA 944, but the front bumper was different. It was a smoother front bumper. The rear valence, they added a rear valence underneath the rear bumper for aerodynamics, so it looked similar, but it was definitely enough of a change to make the turbo look just a little more aggressive and a little sleeker. So this car is owned by my brother. He's had it for about 4 years, and in that time, he has basically built it into a track car and an autocross car and a fast road car, but the primary emphasis has been definitely on autocrossing it and tracking it, and this thing is an absolute blast to drive. Still, you could buy an inexpensive project turbo for not too much money. Now these things are getting up in value, and it's not surprising because, I mean, even a stock turbo is really fun to drive. But the way he has this car set up, this car is it's an impressive car. When he first bought it, the turbo was not boosting correctly. It was, it wasn't as fast as he thought it was going to be, and so sure enough, he had a mechanic look at it, and it needed a rebuilt turbo. And so he just decided to go in and replace the turbo. So what he did was he put a K26-8 turbo on it, which is the turbo that Porsche used on the 1988 Turbo S. So that was a car that had, the first turbo, 944 turbo, had about 220 horsepower. The Turbo S had another like 25 horsepower. It had like 245 horsepower, so it was a pretty good bump up. But then he put in some aftermarket parts, basically. So he put a Lindsay Racing A-Tune, which reflashes the ECU. It's got a Lindsay Racing diverter valve. Most importantly, all those mods allowed him to crank the boost up to about 18 PSI. Now, originally, an 87 Turbo, which is what this is, would have had probably about half that amount of boost pressure. So with the added boost pressure, he's estimating that the engine puts out about 280 to 300 horsepower to the wheels and about 330 foot-pounds of torque. It's a typical old-school turbo. There's a lot of lag. Below 3,000, the car doesn't do a lot. I mean, I have an 88 924S, and off the line, that 924 is like much quicker than this car. But this car, when you get above 3, 4, 5, oh my God, it's very quick. Oh man, this car is just really fun to drive. So, yeah, and the power delivery, like I said, I mean, it's laggy. You have to really you have to watch your gears, because if you're in the wrong gear and you floor it, if you're in too high of a gear, it's not going to go anywhere. But if you keep the gearing, if you're in the correct gear and you're around 4,000 RPM or so, this thing is a rocket. I mean, it is very quick. So the power, basically the boost begins around, I would say 3,500 or so, something like that, and then by 4, it's really pulling, and it pulls all the way smoothly all the way to redline. It feels like produces boost all the way up. And I remember him kind of going through the whole process of trying to get the car to, well, 1, not overboost so that you could damage the motor, and then 2, to actually get it to pull all the way to redline, because there was points there where it was boosting nice and strong, but it wouldn't actually pull all the way to redline. And I know that the Lindsay Racing, like the A-Tune reflash, really did help with that. And so now it's got a nice, like, from 3500 to redline, it's got a nice flat power band. It's one of the reasons why these old school turbos are so fun and they're so addictive. I mean, you know, even though he's got a good amount of power in this thing, I could see him wanting more. And these cars are still very popular tuning cars. I mean, there are a ton of people out there that are modifying 944 turbos for huge power. I mean, I've driven 500 horsepower plus turbos. I mean, they get a little unruly at that point because it's kind of, you know, that's a lot of power and it's a relatively small car. So the suspension modifications are not too extreme. They basically consist of front coilovers from Paragon and then a larger front MO30 sway bar, which is an OEM part that basically came on cars that were spec'd out with a sport suspension, so basically it's just a thicker front anti-roll bar. So the rear uses basically larger 28mm torsion bars, and then it uses the Koni yellows. So he's got Koni yellow shock absorbers at all four corners, which are adjustable. And if, you know, Koni yellows are very stiff shocks. I had them like on an Alpha GTV race car that I had years ago, and they are definitely like serious. And like on this car right now, they're set on full soft. Brakes have been upgraded, not anything crazy. I mean, the 944 Turbo already had upgraded brakes. It had bigger calipers over the naturally aspirated version. So in this case, basically he's just put on Zimmerman cross-rolled rotors for cooling, and then he also has Hawk brake pads, which these pads are great. I mean, they're definitely like, they really have a nice bite, and they haul the car down, you know, really nicely. This car's pretty quick, and I feel like the braking is kind of comparable to the, you know, acceleration. Yeah, this car is really addictive to drive and run up through the gears. You just kind of want to just do it over and over again. It's really stable, and oh man. When the boost kicks in and just running it up through the gears, oh yeah. Also upgraded the wheel and tire package. So originally this thing would have had 16-inch, you know, like phone dials. And so what he's done is he's put on 17 by 8.5-inch Boxster wheels at all four corners, and he's running Federal RSR, kind of R compound. It's like a street track tire. It's got 8.5-inch wheels front and rear, and then 255 with tires front and rear. The handling in this car is really impressive. Like I was saying, I mean, there's, you know, on the road, on the street, it doesn't roll hardly at all, and it's very stable and confidence inspiring. Like I said, the power delivery, it's laggy, but you combine that, like in a car that didn't handle as good, I would say that the acceleration of this thing would be a little sketchier if it didn't have like the upgraded suspension on it. But as it is, it's like the whole package. I mean, the car is really well balanced. It's got good handling, good grip, very healthy acceleration. Yeah, you come out of a tighter corner and you get on the boost, you get the boost just right and then punch it, and you can just feel the back end just kind of come out just a little bit under power, and then you just ride this wave of torque down the straight. It's so fun. Very engaging, and it's a real driver's car. So the exterior of the car has been modified with only just one mod, really, and that's the front splitter. And so it's got a small front splitter, which looks great, that actually was originally intended for a 996 generation 911 turbo. And so it's an aftermarket splitter, and, you know, basically it with some little minor modifications, it fits on the car really nicely. So visually, this car looks, I mean, the 944, like, I love the design of it. I mean, I think most people probably do. I mean, there's not much to not like about it. The 924 is definitely more polarizing because it doesn't have the flares, but a car like this, it's been lowered and it has the splitter on the front and then the white wheels, which with the blue color and the white wheels, it really has the look of like a 944 Turbo Cup car, which was a series back in the 80s, and it just looks really great. The interior has this great Momo competition steering wheel, which, you know, to me, one of the best mods that you can do to a 944 or a 924 is to put a smaller steering wheel on it, because it really, the stock wheels on these cars, they're really thin, and I feel like a bigger, chunkier wheel makes a big difference. Like when I put one on my 924, it made a big difference in the way the car drove. It just felt so much more direct, and so this steering wheel really feels good. In 85.5, Porsche redesigned the 944 interior, and the original interior was like, you can tell when you look at an original 924, 944 interior, it looks like a classic interior from the mid-70s, basically. And I mean, I like that design. It looks very retro, but the redesign they did in the 85.5 944 really is a good-looking redesign. It looks really nice. It's you know, it's got this nice, it's aged really well, and it's got a really cool modern-looking center console. It's very comfortable. It's got this design language that Porsche carried over even to the later cars, like when they came out with the Boxster in the late 90s, it has this sort of similar sweeping kind of design language, and then the nice black gauges with the white lettering. So it has aged really well. It's a nice place to spend time. The switches have this nice kind of chunky feel. It feels like an 80s car. This embodies like a lot. It's a classic car that looks so cool. I mean, this thing gets a lot of looks. People see it and they know what it is, or they see it and they don't know what it is, and they're still, it's got these kind of ostentatious fender flares. I mean, it's a pretty crazy looking car. And this one with the massive wheels that strain out, it looks even better. And it's a practical car as well. It's got a hatchback. You can put a lot of stuff back there. It's got 4 seats. I mean, granted, you're not going to put anybody in the back seat except for little kids, maybe, and maybe possibly a car seat. But you can put stuff back there. You can fold the seats down on top of the. You can fold the backs of the seats down. You can store more stuff back there, and it's still like the later design, like the 85.5 and later interior design. It's a nice car as a daily. But I mean, this is a car that you can buy if you buy a low mileage 944 turbo, even one with some modifications like this one that aren't like over the top. And it's kind of a rolling investment, and it's really fun to drive, and just a fantastic piece of like 80s, kind of 80s coolness. All right, guys, well, thanks for watching again. We will see you on the next video. Thanks again for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you like what you're watching. Hit the like button, comments, good or bad. I've been getting some funny comments from people, mainly good, some really funny criticism, but that goes with the territory. So anyway, we will catch you later.